London, 1765. In a print shop owned by John Newbery, a book is published that will fundamentally alter the sound of the English-speaking nursery. It is titled Mother Goose's Melody, or Sonnets for the Cradle. Within its pages, among dozens of short rhymes, is the first known printing of a verse that has since become synonymous with the act of soothing an infant to sleep. It appears under the title Hush-a-bye Baby. The text is brief, familiar, and physically impossible. It describes a cradle balanced precariously in the branches of a tree, which is then subjected to the wind, a breaking branch, and a catastrophic fall. The book, aiming to be educational, appends a moral to the verse. This may serve as a warning to the proud and ambitious who climb so high that they generally fall at last. This initial presentation is not as a simple song, but as a cautionary tale, a piece of political commentary, however small. This single document from 1765 presents us with our first piece of evidence. It is the root text, the point from which everything else diverges. It establishes that from its very first appearance in print, the verse carried an explicit warning about ambition and downfall. There is no ambiguity here. Newbery, or his anonymous compiler, tells us directly how to read it, yet that is not the verse we possess today. The moral has been stripped away. The title has shifted from Hush-a-bye to Rock-a-bye. The tune, a simple melody composed or adapted decades later by Effie Canning, has transformed it from a printed warning into an oral tradition, a lullaby sung by millions of parents who have no intention of conveying a lesson about political hubris. We are left with two distinct artifacts. On one hand, the historical record, a printed verse with a clear, attached allegorical meaning. On the other hand, the living tradition, a song used for comfort that contains, at its core, an image of absolute infant peril. The project of understanding this rhyme is therefore an exercise in holding two contradictory ideas at once. It requires a kind of parallel autopsy, laying out two versions side by side and examining them element by element to see where the life of one ends and the ghost of the other begins. Our investigation is not about finding a single true meaning. It is about documenting the distance between what was first written and what is now sung. That distance is where the story resides. We will collect these interpretations, not to declare a winner, but to assemble a more complete picture of the object itself. Let us begin the comparison with the first line as it appears in its modern sung form. Rock-a-bye baby, on the treetop. The phrase rock-a-bye is itself a product of evolution. Newbery's 1765 version reads, Hush-a-bye, a more common and direct instruction for quiet. Rock-a-bye is a softer, more rhythmic construction, a portmanteau of the action and the sentiment. It feels designed for music. This is the first surgical alteration, a change that shifts the verse's function from imperative command to gentle description. The second half of the line, on the treetop, presents the central physical absurdity. No cradle is placed in a treetop. It is an image of profound negligence, a situation that could only be engineered through malice or complete folly. In the context of a lullaby, this is often rationalized away as dream logic, a piece of surrealism meant to be whimsical. The parent singing it does not visualize an actual child in a tree. They are simply reciting sounds that have become associated with sleep. The meaning has been bleached out by tradition, leaving only the sonic shell. The image is rendered inert through repetition. Now, let us place the parallel interpretation alongside it. If we accept the 1765 morale as our guide, that the verse is a warning against pride and ambition, the treetop is no longer a literal location. It becomes a metaphor for a precarious position of power. To be on the treetop is to be at the apex, exposed and vulnerable. The baby is not a literal infant. It represents something young, fragile, and perhaps undeserving of its high station. This reading is the foundation for numerous specific historical theories. One popular, though largely unsubstantiated story links the rhyme to the son of King James II of England. In this telling, the baby is the infant Prince of Wales, who was rumoured to be a changeling, a commoner's child smuggled into the palace to ensure a Catholic heir. The wind that blows is the Protestant Revolution, the glorious revolution of 1688 that would sweep him and his family from power. The cradle's fall is the fall of the House of Stuart. The entire verse becomes a piece of coded political commentary, a threat or a prophecy disguised as a nursery rhyme. The folklorists Iona and Peter Opie, in their landmark 1951 work, The Oxford Dictionary of Nursery Rhymes, approach this theory with considerable scepticism. They act as our first scholarly voice in this dialogue. They note that there is no evidence for this whatsoever. The theory first appears in a 19th century American source, centuries after the events it supposedly describes. The Opies represent a critical perspective that demands documentary proof. For them, a story is just a story until a chain of evidence connects it to the source. Their contribution is a vital check on our tendency to prefer a dramatic, specific origin over a mundane or unknown one. They force us to separate the rhyme's documented history from its speculative mythology. They do not deny that the verse could be political, but they firmly deny that the James II theory has any basis in fact. This leaves our parallel reading intact as a type of interpretation, political allegory, but weakens any single, specific claim. The baby in the treetop remains a symbol of fragile power, even if we cannot definitively name the person it was intended to represent. The second line continues the scene. When the wind blows, the cradle will rock. In the lullaby interpretation, this is the most comforting part of the verse. It aligns the song's rhythm with a gentle, natural motion. The wind is a natural force, and the rocking it produces is the very action the parent is mimicking as they sing. It is a moment of harmony between the world of the song and the physical reality of the nursery. The danger of the treetop is momentarily forgotten, replaced by a soothing, repetitive swing. The line serves a practical purpose, justifying the rocking motion that helps an infant sleep. The logic is simple. The cradle in the song rocks, therefore the cradle in the room should rock. The music and the lyrics work together to create a singular, calming effect. The potential energy of the fall is converted into the kinetic energy of a gentle sway. But in the allegorical reading, this line is transformed from a comfort into a threat. The wind is no longer a gentle breeze. It is the wind of political change, of public opinion, of revolution. It is the ill wind of the proverb. When this wind blows, the precarious position of power, the cradle, does not just sway gently, it becomes unstable. The rocking is not a soothing motion, but the first sign of an impending collapse. It signifies the loss of control. The person or dynasty represented by the baby is now at the mercy of forces beyond their command. This reading draws on a long history of wind as a metaphor for social and political upheaval. The scholar John Sutherland, writing on political satire, points out that such natural force metaphors were a common way to discuss treasonous ideas without committing actual treason. One could talk about a storm on the horizon without explicitly calling for the overthrow of the monarch. The line, seen this way, is the turning point of the narrative. It is the moment when the latent danger of the high position becomes an active threat. The stability is gone, and the fall is now not just possible, but probable. This brings us to the third and fourth lines, where the two interpretations diverge most sharply. When the bough breaks, the cradle will fall, and down will come baby, cradle, and all. In the modern lullaby, this is the moment of cognitive dissonance. The song has, up to this point, been gentle. Suddenly, it describes a catastrophic failure. The structure supporting the child gives way, and everything comes crashing down. Most parents soften their voice at this point, or create a playful dropping motion with the child, converting the lyrical violence into a game. This is a form of inoculation. By making the fall a gentle, controlled game, the literal meaning is defanged. As the cultural historian Marina Warner suggests in her work, No Go, the Bogeyman, the horror in nursery rhymes often serves to master fear. By singing about the fall, the parent and child confront the fear of falling in a safe context. It is a controlled exposure to an anxiety, a way of saying, this is the worst that could happen and we can make a game of it. The lullaby, in this view, acknowledges the dangers of the world, but ultimately neutralizes them through play and parental control. The allegorical reading permits no such comfort. The breaking of the bough is the final, irreversible event. It is the snapping of a lineage, the collapse of a government, the breaking of a treaty. It is the point of no return. The fall is not a game, it is a literal depiction of a political downfall. Down will come, baby, cradle and all. This final phrase is one of total destruction. It is not just the baby, the young heir, or the nascent political movement that is destroyed. The cradle, the very structure of their power and protection, is destroyed with them. The word all is absolute. It signifies a complete and total end. There is no recovery from this fall. This is the core of the threat embedded in Newbery's 1765 moral. The ambitious who climb too high will not just be humbled, they will be annihilated. The verse is a promise of political gravity. What goes up must come down, and the landing will be fatal. The confidence with which we can assert a purely political reading, however, begins to fray when we introduce other origin theories. We must now add more items to our collection. Another prominent theory, again popular but lacking definitive proof, suggests an entirely different context. This story claims the rhyme was written by an English colonist in America, observing the way Native American women would place their infants in birch bark cradles suspended from tree branches. In this version, the cradle rocking in the wind is a piece of direct ethnographic observation. The breaking bough and the fall are a fearful projection, an outsider's anxiety about a childcare practice they did not understand. If this theory holds any water, the verse is not a political allegory at all. It is a piece of colonial reportage, tinged with the observer's own cultural biases and fears. The baby is a literal baby, and the threat is a literal threat, born of misunderstanding. This American origin theory is complicated by the work of historical linguists. Scholars like Catherine Elwes Thomas, in her 1930 book, The Real Personages of Mother Goose, propose an even older French root for the rhyme. She suggests it may be a corruption of an old French folk song, with the lyrics being a series of puns and mistranslations. Rockabye could be a mishearing of the French Rocket Bay or Rockin' Bay. Sur la cime, on the top, becomes on the treetop. In this scenario, the entire verse is an accident of language. It is a collection of sounds that crossed the English Channel and were reassembled by English speakers into a nonsensical but memorable scene. The rhyme's violent ending is not a deliberate threat, but the random byproduct of linguistic drift. It means nothing because it was never intended to mean anything. It is a phantom of translation. This introduces a profound level of doubt. We are now holding not two, but 4 possible versions: the political allegory, the comforting lullaby, the colonial observation, and the linguistic accident. The very structure of the modern version seems to argue against a simple, comforting interpretation. The narrative arc is one of escalating peril, from a precarious position to instability to catastrophic failure. It is difficult to read this as anything other than a story of disaster, and this is where the argument of accidental revelation comes into play. The original 1765 version, with its attached moral, contained its own interpretation. The meaning was explicit. When later generations stripped away that moral, they believed they were softening the verse, turning a harsh lesson into a gentle song. They were domesticating it, but they may have achieved the opposite. By removing the specific allegorical framework, they left the raw, terrifying image exposed. The violence of the fall, no longer anchored to a political lesson about hubris, became a free-floating horror. The adaptation, intended to sanitize, accidentally highlighted the starkness of the central image. We are more disturbed by the modern lullaby because it lacks a clear reason for its violence. The fall of an ambitious politician is tragic but understandable within a moral framework. The fall of an anonymous baby from a treetop for no reason at all is simply horrific. Let us re-examine the object now. With this idea in mind, the gentle melody composed by Effie Canning in the 1870s is crucial here. Her tune is sweet, simple, and follows a predictable downward arc, mimicking the action of rocking. It is the perfect sonic vehicle for a lullaby. However, when paired with the lyrics, it creates a jarring contradiction. The music is soothing, but the words describe a fatal accident. This contrast is the source of the rhyme's modern unsettling quality. The 1765 printed version had no tune. It was a piece of text to be read, and its grim moral was perfectly aligned with its grim narrative. The modern version is a song where the music and the lyrics are fighting each other. The music attempts to contain the lyrical violence, to lull the listener into ignoring the words they are hearing, but it cannot fully succeed. The breaking bough always arrives. The fall is always described. The adaptation, by adding a comforting melody, only makes the lyrical horror more pronounced. It is like putting a silk ribbon on a guillotine. The softness of the addition only serves to emphasize the brutality of the original object. This process of domesticating and softening is not unique to Rockabye Baby. The Opies document this as a common trajectory for nursery rhymes. Many rhymes that are now considered children's classics began as bawdy tavern songs, political satires, or records of historical plagues and violence. Ring a Roses is often, though contentiously, linked to the Great Plague. Mary, Mary, quite contrary, is sometimes interpreted as being about the notoriously bloody Queen Mary I. Over time, the specific historical contexts are forgotten. The sharp political edges are worn smooth by generations of repetition in the nursery. The rhymes survive, but their original purposes are lost. What makes Rockabye Baby unique is the sheer visibility of the violence that survived the process. The sanitizers succeeded in removing the political morale, but they could not remove the falling child. The central image was too integral to the rhyme's structure. They were stuck with it. And so are we. The proliferation of alternative lyrics is itself a piece of evidence. Many modern parents, uncomfortable with the original ending, substitute their own. The bough bends, but does not break. The cradle is caught by a waiting parent. Angels watch over the sleeping child. These spontaneous folk revisions demonstrate a collective, ongoing discomfort with the received text. People are actively trying to fix the lullaby, to resolve the contradiction at its heart. They are attempting to complete the sanitization process that began over 200 years ago. Each new, gentle ending is a testament to the failure of the original adaptation. It is an admission that the version we have inherited is, on some level, unacceptable. It does not do the work a lullaby is supposed to do. A song intended to bring a feeling of security cannot end with a depiction of total disaster. The impulse to rewrite the ending is a tacit acknowledgement of the threat embedded in the text. This brings us back to the fundamental question of intent. Was the threat deliberate? If we accept the 1765 version as our baseline, the answer is yes. It was an explicit warning. The intent was pedagogical and political. If we accept the French mistranslation theory, the answer is no. The threat is an accident, a ghost in the machine of language. If we accept the colonial observation theory, the intent is more complex. It is a threat born of fear and cultural misunderstanding, a projection of the observer's anxieties onto the observed. The evidence we have collected does not allow us to choose one of these with absolute certainty. The chain of documentation is broken. There are too many missing links between the 17th century events and the first printing in 1765. There is no definitive proof for the James II story, nor for the Native American story. All we have is the 1765 text and its moral, and the multitude of theories that have grown up around it. The emotional arc of our own investigation has mirrored this uncertainty. We began with the confident assertion offered by the 1765 edition. This is a political warning. It felt solid, a firm place to stand. But as we collected more pieces, the skepticism of the Opis, the alternate origin stories, the theory of linguistic drift, that confidence has necessarily eroded. The object has become stranger, more complex. It resists a single, simple explanation. This shift from confidence to doubt is not a failure of the investigation. It is the result of a more honest engagement with the material. The rhyme's power may not lie in a single, recoverable secret origin, but in its capacity to absorb and reflect the anxieties of every generation that has adopted it. It has become a vessel. For the 17th century political dissident, it was a vessel for treason. For the 18th century moralist, a vessel for a lesson on hubris. For the 19th century parent, a vessel for soothing. For the 20th century folklorist, a vessel for scholarly debate. For the 21st century parent, a vessel for a vague and unsettling feeling. Let's conduct a final side-by-side comparison, a microscopic look at the change from hushaby to rockaby. Hush is a sibilant, a sound associated with silencing. It is an act of imposing quiet. It carries the authority of the speaker. Rock is a plosive, a sound with a physical force behind it. It is an act of initiating motion. The change from one to the other is a change in the fundamental relationship between the singer and the child. The singer is no longer just commanding sleep. They are enacting it. This seemingly minor phonetic shift is part of the machinery that converted the verse from a warning to be read into an action to be performed. The song's modern form is inseparable from the physical act of rocking. This may be the most decisive alteration in its history. It grounded the strange floating imagery in a real, repetitive, physical motion. The meaning became secondary to the function. The song works not because of what it says, but because of what it does. It makes the body sway back and forth, and this motion, older than any language, is what ultimately brings sleep. And yet, the words persist, the fall persists, the image of the broken bough remains lodged in the heart of the melody. The accidental revelation of the adaptation is that by trying to turn a threat into a comfort, it created something that is neither. It created a strange hybrid, a piece of gentle body horror, a lullaby that contains its own failure. It promises security while describing its utter collapse. This internal contradiction is perhaps why it has endured so powerfully. It speaks to a deep parental anxiety, the knowledge that for all our rocking and soothing, the world is a place where boughs can break and cradles can fall. The lullaby, in its modern form, is not a simple promise of safety. It is an acknowledgement of danger, whispered in the safest space we can create. It is a quiet admission that the nursery walls are not impenetrable, that the wind of the outside world is always blowing, and that every position of security is, in some way, precarious. The steady examination of these competing truths leads us not to a neat conclusion, but to a more complicated landscape. Each theory we have collected adds a layer to the object without resolving the core tension. The political allegory, the colonial fear, the linguistic accident, the sanitized lullaby, they all exist simultaneously, haunting the simple verse. It is possible that more than one is true. A folk rhyme can have multiple origins, multiple streams of influence that converge over time. A French fragment could have merged with an English political satire, which was then misinterpreted by a colonial observer before being finally domesticated and set to music. The rhyme is not a single static artifact. It is a living piece of folklore, shaped by countless hands and voices over centuries. Its history is a process of constant rewriting and reinterpretation. The plateau of our investigation is this recognition of irreducible complexity. We have assembled the pieces, traced the divergences, and listened to the scholarly debate. The steady accumulation of evidence has led us not to a final answer, but to a better question. The initial mystery was, what did this rhyme originally mean? We have pursued that through the documents and the theories. We have followed the evidence chain from Newbury's print shop back into the speculative histories of the 17th century and across the Atlantic to the forests of the New World. But the evidence runs out, the trail goes cold, the confidence of a single answer gives way to the doubt of multiple possibilities. So, we are left with the object as it is now, a melody of comfort wrapped around a lyric of disaster. The process of its creation has, through a series of accidents and intentions, produced a cultural artifact of profound and persistent strangeness. It functions as a lullaby in spite of its content, not because of it. Its survival is a testament to the power of melody and motion over semantic meaning. But its unsettling quality is a testament to the fact that meaning can never be entirely erased. The ghost of the warning, the echo of the fall, is always there. The adaptation failed to fully contain it. The violence bleeds through, and this is where we must leave it. The courtroom summary is complete. The evidence has been presented, the expert witnesses consulted, the alternative theories examined. No single verdict can be reached that accounts for all the facts. We are left only with the thing itself, sitting in the cultural nursery, humming with contradictions. The lullaby is a threat. The threat is a lullaby. The two are now inseparable. The verse does not offer a resolution. It simply presents the situation, the height, the wind, the inevitable fall. And having described this, it stops. It offers no comfort, no explanation, no moral. Not anymore. The moral was scrubbed out, and in its place, a silence has grown. The final piece in our collection, then, is this silence, the absence of the explicit meaning that was once attached. The original verse knew what it was about. The modern verse is not so sure. And this uncertainty is what we pass on to our children in the dark as we try to rock them to sleep. We sing of a precarious peace, a temporary safety that can be shattered at any moment by a force of nature or a structural failure. What does it mean for a culture to choose this specific story, this image of failed protection, as the vehicle for its most intimate expressions of care? What wound is being touched upon? What fear is being named when we sing of the baby, the cradle, and the fall?